Welcome. My name is Javier, and I work in our community and developer relations initiatives here at Front. Thanks for taking the time to join our workshop. We're really excited. We hope that you get a lot out of it today. And please feel free to raise your hand in Zoom or type questions into the Q&A as we go along, so we can field those questions at any point. It doesn't have to be too formal. And today we're going to explore front connectors. So that's our no-code framework that lets you integrate with external systems, things like your CRM, your project management tools, custom databases, like really anything that has an API. So any external system with an API you can connect to with connectors. And essentially you can bring data in from those external systems into your front conversations, give your teammates more context. You can also take actions in those external systems without leaving your inbox. So that's what we're going to talk about today. There's absolutely no coding required. You don't need developer resources to get this going. You need to learn a little bit about APIs, but we'll talk about that. But aside from that, you can do it all in front. So we recently launched a library of pre-built connectors. The platforms include Salesforce, HubSpot, Jira, which we'll talk about today, Asana, and Pipedrive. So you can connect to all of these without actually having to configure the connector itself, which is usually like the more technical part. You can just implement these directly into your workflows, like your rules, your macros, your chatbots. And when you do, you'll have full access to what each of those services provides through their API. So whatever Jira, for example, allows you to do through their API, you'll now be able to do in your rules, in your macros, and in your chat flows in front. And so without any more delays, let's get into today's workshop. We're going to walk through a real world example of this Jira connector, and then we'll walk through how to set it up in front. So it's just going to be a macro that runs in front, uses our connector that's available from our app store. And aside from that, we're ready to go. So let me switch over to front. So you should see my front inbox here. And I'm going to show you the connector, the macro that we're going to run for Jira. So essentially your front teammates will be able to access this macro if you set it up in a workspace. And when they click on a conversation in the macro list, they'll be able to select the macro. So we're going to demonstrate the Jira one today. They're going to click create new Jira issue. So this allows them to create one. So we'll just run through this and then we'll see how it works behind the scenes. So the first step is just selecting the Jira project that they have. This is connected to our front instance. So I'm going to go ahead and select our product backlog and add a test issue in there. It's then going to prompt you to select the issue type. So there's going to be different types of issues in Jira. This is all working behind the scenes through our connector. The connector is pulling this information from Jira through the API. And so it kind of just works automatically. So we're going to select the issue type. These are some of our issue types. I'm going to file this as a bug and then click next. And now it's going to ask me for project components. This is actually like an optional property, but for bugs, it's a required property for us. So we're going to select the project component, I'm going to assign it to the connectors team since we're talking about connectors today. So I'll click that and then I'll click next. And I'm going to enter an issue name. So this would be the name of your Jira ticket. I'm just going to say testing Jira workshop so people know that this is just a test, and I'm going to mark it for deletion and click next. It's going to ask me for a description. And so all of this is coming from your teammates. You can customize these fields however you want. You can add more if you'd like. Testing for workshop is what I'm going to put in there for now. We can select the due date. So I'm going to go ahead and just select the due date sometime in February and click done. Then I'll click next. And at this point, the connector that's connected to this macro is going to run behind the scenes and actually create this issue. So now we see this comment being created where we've got a new issue. If I click into that, we actually see that this issue was created in our Jira instance. So all happen through front, all very integrated into your workflow. So very easy to create a Jira ticket if you use these connectors. So how do you get started? The first thing you want to do is make sure that you've got Jira installed on our App Store. So to do that, we'll go to settings and go to company. and then you want to go find App Store. And so here you can search for Jira and click into Jira. We already have it enabled, so we see this like green enabled pill up here. But if you don't have it enabled, you'll see a button that says enable app. And essentially, once you enable it, you'll have connected Jira. You'll have to go into this authentication tab. And in this authentication tab, you'll be asked to sign in. So I think, let's see, is this, I'm gonna, it seems signed in. It says that there's an error, but it just works. So I think we're good. But like if you're brand new to this, you won't see any sign in status. So you can go ahead and click in there, sign in with your Jira account, and so then that will connect you to Jira, so you can access your particular Jira instance. Um, but then aside from that, you're good to go. At that point, you'll have all the Jira connectors that we're going to talk about in this workshop, and that's all the setup that you would need to do to get this integration into your place. I'll pause there just in case there are any questions so far. Kelsey, let me know if there are. If not, I'll continue.
None in the chat.
Okay. If anyone has a question, just feel free to raise your hand or type something into the chat. Okay. So like, how does this work? Like, how do we actually get this to work? So what we want to do is we'll remain in our settings, but we'll go to a particular workspace. I'm going to use this Balcony Bliss demo instance that we have. And then you want to find your rules and macros, because connectors are available in your workflows. And we'll show you something where exactly they're available. But you can put them into rules, which would run automatically. You can put them into macros, which, as we demonstrated, require a teammate to execute them manually, input information manually. You can also put them into your chatbot flows. So for this particular workshop, we're doing a macro. And so you'll go to your macro section, and then you'll create a new macro. Click create. We're going to create one from scratch. Create macro. And in this first step, we'll give the macro a name. I'm going to say create Jira issue, and give it a description, adds a new issue to Jira. This just helps your team. This displays to your teammates, so it kind of tells them what it does, so they know which macro to select. You can customize which inbox it displays for, what teammates have access to it. I'm going to leave it open for this example, but you can kind of filter that down if you need to. We click done, and now essentially we're ready to start the macro. When you work with macros, you got this little plus icon that lets you add in nodes. And so these three nodes are really powerful. Like the first one is called branch by condition. It allows you to essentially like have multiple paths depending on the value of something. So maybe if the value is one thing, you do a certain set of actions. If the value is another thing, you do another set of actions. So we'll talk about that one a little bit later. But when it comes to connectors, you'll find your connectors within this send app request node and the collect teammate answers node. Send app request is actually it's a node that's like directly tied to connectors. An app request is what we call essentially like an API action in the external system. So if I were to click that one, it drops in this app request node, and it asks me to select an app request. So when I do that, I'll be able to see all the connectors that we have set up. And if I scroll down, I'll find the ones for Jira. You can see that we have 280 different actions available in Jira, and you can kind of just see that there's quite a bit in here. They all of these correspond to exactly what's in Jira's API. So all of these actions are in there. We'll talk about the API docs in a bit, but that's where you would find more information about what each of these actions does and how to use them. But yeah, this comes straight, like once you install the Jira app from our app store and connect, you'll have access to all of this in your workflows. You can also search. You can see here, like if we wanted to add an attachment, like we could just say add attachment, and we would get back issues that kind of match that query. We could specify it down to Jira if we wanted to, just to see like only connectors from Jira, which should be helpful. So that's the node that just lets you drop in a connector directly into your workflow. And we'll use this node a little bit later when we actually create the Jira issue. But before that, if you remember, we prompted our teammates for a lot of information. So I'm actually going to just cancel out of this. I'm not going to drop that node in there just yet. What I want to do is if we go back to what we did with our connector, the very first step once people ran our connector was to ask them what Jira project they wanted the connector to update. So the way we do that is we actually drop in a teammate answer node. So this is going to prompt your teammates to provide an answer. And when we click add prompt, we can name this select Jira project because that's the step that we're on. That's the step that we start with. And under type, we'll select dropdown. So this provides a drop-down menu for people to select. You can create your own drop-down menu, but we want this to be powered by a connector so that the options available to people are coming from Jira. So we're going to click dynamic drop-down from a connector. And the connector we want to use is one that returns all the projects for Jira. So I'm going to, I know this is called get all projects and I'm going to type in Jira. So if we look through here, there's one here called Get All Projects for Jira. That's the connector I want. If you wanted to figure out which one you need to use, that's where the API docs are very helpful. I'm going to click over here. This is an example of getting that project of the endpoint that we're going to use. It might look like pretty technical to you if you haven't worked with APIs before or read API documentation, but we'll send out resources after this workshop that link to an academy course that explain APIs from start to finish, and it's geared at non-technical people, non-developers, non-engineers. So you'll be able to learn how to read these docs and make sense of them so that when you're back in front, you know which connector to choose and you know like what the inputs mean, what your options are to use this connector. In this case, we just kind of want to use this particular endpoint very simply. We just want to get all the projects. We don't want to filter them down for any reason. You can for your business use case if you know that you want to filter them down to a specific subset of projects. But for our purposes for this demo, we just kind of want to get all the projects that are available in Jira. We're not going to mess with these inputs right now. So we're just going to go straight down to the drop-down options. And what these drop-down options are is like what we present back to the teammate in front that is selecting from our menu. So we're gonna click this menu and see that like the Jira connector is returning a list of items. And essentially these items are just what comes back from the API representing the projects that are available. And as far as the options text, this is the actual text that they read. So if we go back to our screenshot here of the Jira project, we can see that we've got compliance and marketing services and product backlog, and these are projects in Front's instance of Jira. So to get those to display, we're looking for the project name. So we've got a lot of properties here that we could display to people, but the one that's most useful in this case is the name. That's what people are going to select. They're going to select the project name. So that's what we want to display to our teammates. So that will be all we need to do for this particular prompt. We'll click done. So now we've collected the project that the teammate wants to add an issue to. So the next step in this process was to then select a issue type. So for example, a task or a subtask, a story, a bug, an epic, whatever types of issues that you have in your Jira configured is the next step. You want to tell the connector what you're trying to create. So to do that, we follow a similar process. We're going to create a new teammate answer node. So we're going to collect this from our teammates and we'll add a prompt. Let's call this prompt select issue type. So they know what they're doing in this step. And similarly, we'll select for this to be powered by a dropdown. And it should be powered by a connector because we want these values to come from the external service that we're connecting to. And again, by going to the API docs, we know that there's a particular API action available in Jira that gets all the issue types for a project. So that's actually exactly what we're looking for. So we're going to search for something that's called get issue types for project. And I'm going to say Jira. So just kind of scrolling through some of the matches here, we find one. This is issue types for user. That's not really the one we're looking for. But this one here, get issue types for project, is the one we're looking for. So that's the one we'll select. And in this case, we see that there is a required input. the project ID, because if it doesn't, if we need to tell it which project we're trying to get issue types for. So we need to create a dynamic variable that will represent that ID. So a dynamic variable is just a like powerful concept in front that allows you to pull in information from either your front conversation or from external services you're connecting to. There's a lot in here that you can do. So we have a lot of docs around it. If you have questions about using the dynamic variable system, just let us know after the workshop. But what we're going to do here is just say click new dynamic variable and create a new one. And what we want to do is base this dynamic variable on the project that the teammates selected. So we have this at the very top, we have this category called teammate answers to prompts. They represent the answers that the teammate run in this macro has selected thus far. So the one that we have created prior is the one where they select the project. We want to take that answer and then extract essentially the ID of that project because that's what this particular connector needs to run. So we can see here we've got the an email that might correspond to that maybe that project's owner or something like that. We've got the name of the project, but what we're looking for is the ID. This is what the API will use to actually run the connector and figure out what issue types are available. So I'm going to select ID and I'm going to call this the project ID and click save to save that variable. And now I have access to that variable. Should be able to add it in. Oh, one caveat to that is that this takes a number field, so I didn't notice that at first. So it's not showing because we saved it as a text field. So that's actually a good demonstration of how you might have to work with the API to put it into the right format. So let's do that again. Let's select the project answer the teammate provided. Let's add a step to extract its ID, but then let's format it so that it's a number. So I think we've got it's parse as number, and then we're going to say project ID again, um, and this will be in a number form. And so now I can find it and add it. So it's in the correct form that the API wants. And so now, again, we need to present those answers to our teammates to let them select the issue type. So I'm going to click the items list and see what the items list comes back with. It comes back with all these things: avatar ID, name, self. These are all the things that come back from the API. So if you remember when we created this step, we kind of had the name of the issue type plus a description that might help people start to understand why you might want to select that particular issue type. So those are, what I thought would be helpful for a teammate to select, but you can add in others if you think it's useful. So I'm going to add in the name. I'm going to type a little pipe character, and then I'm going to add in the description of this issue type. So click done and done. And so now we've got a macro that lets a teammate select a Jira project and then select a issue type for that Jira project. All right. So let's see where we're at. The next step would be to, let's see. Next step should be to select the project component. Yes. So this project component, you may or may not have this requirement depending on the type of Jira issue that you select. So Jira is very customizable. In our case, when we select certain types of Jira issues in front system, we have this component that kind of represents the team or the feature actually that it all correlates to. So you might have something custom that is required to create a new issue. This is where you would really customize this macro to ask your teammates to select the things that are maybe the components for you that are like required for your issue types, depending on how your Jira admins configured your instance. So in our case, we need that component. So again, if we go look at the API docs, there's going to be something to get components. But going back into front, let's do the same thing we've been doing. Let's collect another teammate answer. We'll call this, let's say, select component because that's relevant to what front needs, and we'll power this by a dropdown. So. One second. We'll click dynamic. And then so the project, the app request that we're looking for would be something along the lines of project component Jira. So this first one is find components. I believe we're looking for get project components. So yes, so get project components is what we're looking for. And again, this takes a project ID as a requirement. So that's the same ID we might have created before. So we can take that in and put it in there. And in this case, we'll select the items that come back from the connector, that come back from the API. And for the component, I think that when you take a look at that, we probably just need the name. So for our purposes, I'm just going to say let's display the name to the admins. But again, you can display other fields if you want to. If you think they're useful, you might want to display the description in there as well. Um, Now we'll click done and done. So we've got a macro that selects the Jira project, asks the teammate to select the issue type, and then selects the component for that issue type. And so then the next step that we had was to enter an issue name, quickly followed by a description. So we'll go ahead and create those. These are going to be simpler when we just collect teammate answers. We'll just select normal text, and so we can say enter issue name. So this is completely up to the teammate running it. We're not powering this part through a connector, so that's a much simpler node to configure. We just click done, and we'll do the same thing for our description. We'll say collect the teammate answer, add a prompt, keep it as type text, and say enter issue description, and click done. And depending on like the complexity of how many fields you have in Jira and how many fields you want your admins to specify, when you create a new Jira issue, you can like continue to do this. You can continue to do this and have a lot of optional fields filled in, but to eventually create the new issue, you have to make sure that you have the required fields. And so if you don't know what the required fields are, you can work with your Jira admin to figure out what the required fields are for an issue type. But that's the minimum that you'll need. If you don't have those, you won't be able to create the Jira issue. So just make sure that the prompts that you're asking your teammates to fill in meet those requirements.
Javier,
Yes,
there is a question that might actually be relevant within this description
perfect.
field.
Yeah.
Scott had asked, is there a way to automatically populate a front link in the Jira bug that was created so that you can easily click a link to go back to the front ticket? I know front actually does this. Our support team does this within the
Yeah.
description. Could you quickly show how to get a conversation link within dynamic variables?
Yeah. And so the part that you probably want to put that in is like later. You probably wouldn't want to collect it here, but I will show just for demonstration purposes. Dynamic variables is exactly what you would want to use. It is a very powerful system. And so when you click new dynamic variable, we had talked about the teammate answers before, but there's other things you can do. Like you can extract the conversation ID, you can extract a subject, who it's assigned to. So there's all this information like ticket ID, tickets. So like there's all this information in here that you can like use in the dynamic variable system, and you can look at our help center to see like the full values. And so from there, you can kind of create a link back to the front conversation based on its ID. And so you would create a new. I don't think we have one specifically for the URL to the conversation. I think that's been requested, but I think we only have the ID. Um, if one of the engineers on the call knows otherwise, let me know. But I think we have the ID from which you can construct a URL by processing. Like essentially, you'd like kind of combine some dynamic variables together to create some a text field, and then you would just kind of save your variable, and you would have it available to you as the conversation ID or the conversation link, and you could like toss it into one of these fields. But we wouldn't toss it in here because this is like where you're collecting answers. You would be able to toss it in later. So I'll show an example of that at the end of the macro, which is probably the appropriate place to toss this in. But yes, so I hope that answers the question. If not, let me know. Okay. If there's any follow-up questions, we can chat about them a little later. But yes, great question. Okay, so we've got all that. Enter the issue name, enter the issue description. We had also added a due date. That's kind of pretty common thing in Jira. So the way to do that is similarly, you collect a teammate answer, you drop it in. This time we'll change it from text to date. So I'll say select due date. So now they'll have like a little calendar picker that adds in the date, uh, and click done. And so essentially for what we demonstrated, we've kind of got everything we need. Again, if you have other required fields beyond these, you'll have to add those in yourself. And another thing to note is that depending on the issue type you select, you might have different required fields. So like a real world implementation of this might be like a lot more complex because like maybe if you select a bug versus a story, you have different components and different required fields. So in that case, what you might do is like a branch by condition node to where depending on what issue type is selected, so like if the issue type, you know, contains, so we probably we create a new dynamic variable here based on the issue type answer, and we'd probably extract the name, and save this as like issue name, for example. Um, and so if this contains, let's say like bug, uh, then you would create one branch that would do the things for the bug. If it was a story, you might create another branch that would do things for the bug or for the story. So that's the way you would handle varying requirements for each of your issue types is by branching by these by this condition node. So we're not gonna go down that route here in the workshop just to kind of keep things a little bit simpler, but that's how it would work. And you have questions about that later, please reach out to us so we can help you get that set up. So I'm just gonna cancel out of that for now. And it looks like it created it, but let me just delete this real quick for simplicity. But yeah, so we're back to the point where in the macro we've collected everything we need for this particular demonstration. And so after the due date, we can actually go ahead and create the issue. The due date was like the last thing that we had asked from our teammates. So at this point, we don't need to collect more teammate answers. We can just drop in that app request node that we demonstrated at the beginning directly into our process. And we go look at the API docs. There's this create issue API endpoint. So we're going to look for something similar, a create issue in Jira that allows us to create this new Jira ticket. So I'm going to say create issue, and I'm going to make sure it's limited to Jira. And just this third result here looks like the right one. It says create issue. So we've got a lot of fields in here. Again, you can learn more about them by looking at the API docs. And we do have a whole Academy course that helps you and teaches you how to read those API docs if you're not already familiar. But I'm gonna essentially like the most important input here is the fields, which is what we're passing into the um, the app request so that it creates the issue type appropriately. And if we do go look at the Jira docs, we see that there's an example here, and this is called JSON. A lot of a lot of a lot of APIs use this notation, and you'll see that it usually has like a property value. Like for example, we have fields, and within that we have like an assignee, and then we have that assignee's ID. So it uses this notation to send the data that we collected over to the API so that it knows what to do with it. So looking through when you create a new issue, looking through their docs, we know that you can send the assignee if you wanted to. That's not a required field for front, so we didn't demonstrate collecting that. There's a lot of custom fields you can send if you have custom fields for your issue types. For us, we're going to send a description. We did want to do that. We're going to send a due date. We're going to send a project ID, which is a required field almost always. And so that we're also going to send a component as well because that's required for us to send the component. But this may vary for you. You may have other fields in here that you'll have to send depending on your the way Jira was configured for you. So if you have questions about that, let us know. afterwards. I'm going to paste a bunch of stuff in here. This essentially is the JSON notation I talked about. So essentially, it's it's like I mentioned, you have a property value in quotation marks, and then you have the value you want to send in quotation marks as well. So in this case, for the content that I want to send, this is actually the description. So I'm going to click this little plus sign here and find the variable that represents that. So we asked our teammates in one of the prior nodes, what do you want to write in for the description of this issue type? So I'm going to click in enter issue description answer, and that will satisfy that requirement. I know that the JSON format looks a little complex, but you kind of copy it from the API docs and paste it in here, and then fill in the information that should be a variable versus the straight text. But yeah, again, if there's any questions about this, we can help with that later. Here for the due date, I am going to enter in the due date answer, so we can send it from here, and the project ID, we actually need that to be based on the project ID that we had extracted before. So we had already created that dynamic variable. The summary is like the issue name. So under collected inputs, we have enter issue name. So the answer to that is what we want for the summary. And then this issue type, we had if you remember, we asked our teammates to select a particular issue. We don't have a variable yet that represents the issue type's ID. So we'll have to create that. So let's create a new dynamic variable, select the issue type that our teammates selected, and let's extract its ID. So here's its ID. So I'm going to call this issue type ID and click save. And then we'll add it in here in between the quotation marks. Select issue type. Oh, that's the wrong one. We need the ID, not the answer. So issue type ID. And then, like I mentioned, components are required when we create a new Jira issue. This may not be true for you, but we're going to add in a component. And again, for that one, we're going to have to extract its ID. So let's create a new dynamic variable. In this case, we want the component answer and see what fields are available for it. You got your name, your project, but the one we're interested in is the ID. And if you're unsure what you need, look at the API docs. They'll tell you we need the ID, we don't need the name. So in this case, it was the issue, the component ID. Click save. Excuse me. So click in here between those two quotation marks, and let's get the component ID in there. So essentially, we set up this JSON. We're sending a description with an answer provided by our teammate. We're sending a due date with the answer provided by our teammate. There's also a project ID. The teammate selected a project ID, but of a project itself, and then we extracted its ID in a dynamic variable. The summary was typed in directly by our teammate, so we've got that answer in there. The issue type and the component ID, both of them were selected by our teammates as far as the issue and components were concerned, and we took an extra step to extract their ID out of that selection. So we've got all this field stuff ready to go, and you got some other inputs in here that you may or may not want to use for our purposes. That's not required, so we're just going to do this simply and create this issue with these fields in place, and then click done. And we're essentially done with our macro at this point. Like we've collected everything we need. We're running the app request, the connector, to create the new issue. And if you remember, we provided a link to what was created at the end. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate that. So like if this succeeds, we want to add a comment with the link to the new issue. So for us, I typed in something like this, where it's like the Jira issue was created, and it was created at this URL, which obviously is a front URL, but you can adapt this to your needs. And one of the outputs that gets returned by this app request when it runs, you got an ID for the new issue type, you've got a key, you've got some other things. It's actually the key that you need. The key will, like in our case, represent like the ticket number. So our URL will use this key, and so then that will form the full path that you saw to this particular URL here, front.net, and the key is this PB67263 thing. So we do that, click done, and so now that's completed our macro. This is exactly what we demonstrated uh, some short while ago. And yeah, you can, like I mentioned, you can adapt this to your needs. You can also access the full list of other app requests that you have under Jira. You can go find Jira and see there's 280 of them. So there's quite a lot you can do in here. They'll all probably follow like a similar pattern to what we demonstrated, but there's a lot more things you can kind of like browse through here and see what might be useful to you. And then you can go refer to these API docs, which we'll send links to after this workshop, so that you can understand what each thing does better, or maybe you have questions about the inputs. You can read through here to see what you should be entering for those. With that, that ends our workshop. So we thank you for your time, and I'll open the floor to any other questions we might have.
Yes, there are a couple questions.
Cool.
First one was around documentation and recording. We will be following up with docs. I do see an anonymous post around, can you link the documentation now, so I can build along? I believe we're happy to stay on if you want us to help you build this. We are hoping that was the intent. So if there's a specific question, um, feel free to write in the chat, and we can work through it together. There was a separate question from Krista, it looks like. Javier, are you able to see? I can read it out, or you might want to pull up the Q&A quick, just
Okay,
to
let me see if I
understand
can
it.
pull up the. Is it's in the Q&A or is in the?
Q&A.
Okay. I was looking for this yesterday and couldn't find it. I'd like to have any tickets that have a Jira attached to it automatically added to a specific inbox once the Jira is either created in front or an existing ticket is attached to the case in front. Okay, so that is actually, I think what you're asking for is like, let's see, I'd like to take this. So I might take you off just to confirm. I might take you off mute, Krista, if you don't mind, just to explain. But I think we might be talking a little bit more about app objects, which we didn't demonstrate today, but it's definitely possible. So give me a second. I'm gonna see if I can take you off mute. And if you want to like maybe explain a little bit more of.
Yeah, so I'm thinking more in terms of routing. So when our team creates the tickets, we can do it in with the integration. We've got the ticket created. Once Front sees that that ticket's created, I want it to be able to take that ticket and put it into its own inbox, essentially. So I want to move them all into one inbox so that our team has a way to very quickly, visibly see what we have as far as open Jira tickets and the cases they're attached to.
Okay. And when you say like put that ticket, do you mean that conversation, or do you just want
Uh,
like what would you want in that new inbox?
yeah, the conversations.
Okay. So let me go back to the macro. I believe here, if we added an action, let's see, move to inbox. So like you could just move this conversation at the end of the macro to, let's say, like, this pretend that air call voice was the place that you wanted to move it to. You could probably just do that. I think that's what you're looking to do. You could also set up a separate rule that maybe looks for um, links of this format, and so that would like mean that like you don't have to run this macro to do that. So like any comment or even like something in a message body for a ticket like this could move it. But in that case, it will move like any comment with that link. So maybe you want to only run it after when the macro is created.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that I think answers my question. Thanks.
Great. And there, we don't have a demo of it here today, but the other thing you can do is called an application object. And essentially, it will look through all your conversations and like things like this pattern where you have a link that's very predictable with a key to Jira. You could also create like that's the other side of connectors. Like we demonstrated the connectors that are called app requests that take actions in the external system, but we also have app objects and they'll bring in context from that Jira ticket into your conversation. So they'll essentially create like a little like link at the top of your conversation that if it finds a matching pattern, like the pattern could be something similar to this, where you have this URL followed by a combination of numbers and letters. It will identify that in a comment. It will identify that in your messages, and like pull in information for that Jira ticket. So you'd then be able to just kind of hover over that little object and see the ticket name. You'll be able to see whatever fields that you want to configure and bring back. Ticket name, description, status, due date, things like that, like whatever you want to put in there. It'll pull that from Jira and add it to your conversation. So that's the other side of connectors. And we have information in our docs about how to use those. So that can be useful, give you context, and you can also like click directly on that little object and it'll send you out to the Jira ticket if you need to make more changes in there. Yeah, great question. And what else? Let's see. Were there any other questions, Kelsey?
No other questions.
Okay. Um, if there's no other questions, yeah, thanks everyone for your time. We will send a recording of this plus links. We have a community group and space that'll be linked in there. So if you try to implement this, we hope you do try to implement this in your real world front instance, and you run into questions. It is technical in some ways, right? So if you run into questions, like please reach out there or reach out through the email that we sent. We'd love to help you get this in your, running live so that it actually provides some value to you. But other than that, thanks again for attending. We'll see you.